Well, here we are in the 21st century. The vast majority of people rely on supermarkets and food manufacturers to get them the food that they consume. What a massive difference that was compared to back in the medieval period, where people generally had to be self-sufficient. They produced the vast majority of the food that they ate themselves. There's another key difference between modern day life and medieval life. Nowadays we are unbelievably wasteful, particularly with the food that we consume. Typically, a quarter to a third of the food that households buy in supermarkets ends up being wasted, ends up in the bin. What an unbelievable waste that is. But that was not the case back in the medieval period. Everything was squeezed out of the food supply. Nothing was wasted. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how to cook these. These are pig's trotters, and actually you get quite a large quantity of usable food from them. So we're after the meat on those hooves, but we're also after the gelatine as well, because we're making some game pie and we need the gelatine to add to them. In the pan we have 4 pig's trotters plus some pork belly bones left over from a meal that we had recently, and I'm going to add in a litre of stock that we made from boiling up the game that's going into our pies. So here are the bones and the stock. What I'm going to do now is just add water to this so that all the bones are covered. So I'll put the pan back on the cooker and we're going to bring these to the boil. Back in the medieval period, those households with their pigs, they would have fattened them up in the late summer and early autumn, which is the period that we're in now. If you had foraging rights in the local woodland, you would have taken your pigs there. They would have eaten the acorns, the conkers, the haw-berries, rose hips and so on, and they would have been fattened up, and most of those animals would have been slaughtered in time for the winter, so you had a meat supply over the winter, but it also meant that you weren't feeding large numbers of animals over the winter as well, when your feed supplies were quite restricted. Not all animals would have been slaughtered. You would have needed some breeding animals for the following year, and something such as your ox, which would have been the tractor of its day. Obviously animals like that would have been kept, and you would have had to ensure a supply of feed for them to get them through the winter. The pan's now come up to the boil, and I've turned the heat down. I'm going to let it simmer for at least an hour and a half, and I'm going to add in some fresh herbs from the herb garden. The trotters have been simmering away for about 2 hours. I've taken one of them out of the pan now, and what we're looking to do is just see how easily the meat falls away from the bones, and it's literally peeling away quite easily. And that means that the meat is now cooked. So we're going to take the trotters out and we're going to strip the meat from them. We'll let them cool down a little bit because I don't want to get my fingers burned, and then we'll put the bones back in to the pan with the juice there and boil them up for a bit longer to make sure we get all the gelatine out of it. The last time I boiled up pig's trotters to get meat off them, we did get a reasonable amount of meat. Sadly today we've got that little bit there. Now you could be forgiven for thinking that that is a bit of a wasted exercise, but it's not. We're after the gelatine. That's the main reason why we're boiling up those bones. But what we've also been able to strip from the bones is this. This is the skin and gristle and the sort of little bits of flesh around the ankle bones, and that's an extremely important source of fat. And indeed what we are planning to do with that is to render it so that we can extract the fat. So basically what happens is we boil it up in water and then we put it through a sieve like we have done here. This is from another set of bones that we've been boiling up today, and that is a really good source for pig fat for lard. And back in the medieval days that would have been used as a source for calories, but also the fat can be used for preserving some perishable foods as well. So we'll put the bones back into the liquid in which the trotters were boiled up, and we're going to apply heat to these, and we're going to let these come back to the boil, and then we're going to simmer them for about another hour. Make sure we squeeze the last bit of gelatine out of there. Now on the back of the cooker here is a pan of the sort of gristle and skin that we've taken from another part of the pig, and that is actually what is being used to make the lard. Well, this has now had long enough, and it's time to strain it through a sieve. It's now 24 hours since I extracted the gelatine from the pig's trotters, and we will know it's worked if the stock that the gelatine was in has set. And as you can see, it is set as a rather nice jelly. So now that we've got that bit successfully done, what we're going to do is add some of that gelatine to a couple of pies I've made. These are the game pies I was making yesterday as well. And we're going to heat up the gelatine, get it to liquefy again, and then we're going to pour it into the pie. So here we have our two pies, and we need a funnel, and we simply pour in the gelatine. It will be absorbed throughout the pie, and then we will let them cool down, and the gelatine will set again in the pies. The game pie that we made yesterday has now had 24 hours for the gelatine in it to turn back into a jelly. So we're going to cut this. So, didn't all quite come out in one piece, but here goes. Well, that is lovely. Sadly, the second pie that we had, we put into a competition here at the Bow Show, and it didn't win any prizes. However, it'll do well for lunch for us. Cheers.